Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, CesarRespino. Hello there and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, CesarRespino, and you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Jennifer Smith. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Hey, how are you? I promise I'm coming back.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. So let me give you guys a little bit of a background on Jennifer so you guys can kind of get an idea of who she is and just kind of step into knowing more about her. So Jennifer, she's a mom of 3 amazing miracles. She created a program that helps people heal from their traumas so they can find relief from their autoimmune disease. She also speaks out on domestic violence and is in the process of creating content to get into every school level to educate and help anyone in this kind of unhealthy environment. Wow, that's awesome. So Jennifer, why don't we start by telling me a little bit more about you? Where are you from and what was your upbringing like?
Absolutely. First, I want to thank you, Cesar, so much for having me. I don't know if it's okay to say, but this is my first podcast, so I'm super, super excited.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for having me. I was raised in very cold Buffalo, New York. Grew up on Lake Erie, so lake effect snow is terrible. I think I have PTSD from the snow. So when I graduated from college, I went ahead and moved south. It was literally the spot I picked on the map. It was the old time paper map. Where do I want to go? Florida was just too cliche, too hot, and North Carolina still had snow. So it was between Savannah and Charleston. Charleston's the first one I visited, so here I landed.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it was pretty cool. And my parents were just as adventurous. They sold their house of 20 years, my dad's business of 15, and they came with me. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. So let me ask you this, like growing up, did you ever had any kind of challenges or anything? Like one of the things that comes to mind a lot is when I grow up, I want to be X, Y, and Z, right? So I'm curious to know, what were you wanting to be growing up as a kid?
Good question, right? So we all have these, big dreams, or at least as a kid, they look like big dreams. Yeah. They were, I really liked the idea of being a teacher. So I actually got my degree in early childhood education. I loved the babies. I loved the innocent in a baby's face and eyes. So I zeroed in on that. And then actually right from college, graduating, I opened up my own daycare out of the house back in Buffalo. So I had completely transformed the basement into this whole daycare center. And my mom worked with me and we had a whole bunch of kids. And then of course we decided to move.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I wanted to do when I was little.
Wow, that's awesome. So let me ask you this, like even with growing up, a lot of times I know as teenagers and even people that might be in their younger years, sometimes we go through certain challenges, and the biggest thing is we don't know how to deal with those challenges or how to deal with life in itself, right? And so are there any tips that you can give us as to how you can start drafting your life in a positive direction?
Absolutely. Because challenges are everywhere, especially growing up. I forget now. I am so glad I had it back then because the challenges now are insane. I have a teenager and I have 2 more coming up from there. So I do not envy that. So growing up for me, I was very quiet. I was very shy. Little did I know that was coming off as snobby. I was in a private school. I really just kept to myself. But by senior year, when I really came out of my shell and I was like, oh, we get to actually live life now. Everyone's like, oh, you're actually nice. I was like, what do you mean? So honestly, I really encourage people to come out of their shell. People want to get to know you. I really waited too long to do that.
I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes we're so afraid to just take in that step forward, right? And do something
Mm-hmm.
with ourselves. I want to talk about a
Sure.
couple of things you have going on, right? So you are an upcoming author, so I want to talk about that and what drive you to do that. You are a real estate investor. You are a kind of like a mind coach, and you're a speaker.
Mhm.
So how did you end up with all
Mhm.
of that in your journey?
Right? Right? You know, someone told me a couple of years ago, if your dreams are not big enough and they don't scare you enough, they're not big enough.
I
So
love
I
that.
really went big. I scared the heck out of myself with these ideas.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, as I quit my 9 to 5 job and I went out on my own to build my empire, I have more and more people just flat out laughing at me going, "What are you doing?" And I was like, good, I've achieved that really big, scary idea. So how did all that? I just kind of got to know myself over the years and really took the time to get to know myself and what drove me. I'm good. Everyone's good at a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the point. The point is to do what drives you and what gives you passion and excited to wake up. I am excited whether I know what I'm doing that day or not, or if it flourishes the way I expect it to. I'm excited to wake up every single day. So that is what was so great about it. So I got into, you know what, I actually dabbled in real estate like 20, 25 years ago in the very, very beginning when I moved to Charleston. I loved the idea, but I did not have enough information. So in the last year, I spent a lot of time. I was fortunate enough to get into a program. I learned a lot about wholesaling. I got to flip my first house at the beginning of this year. So that really kind of just gave me the taste to be like, yeah, I really like this. So that's more of a hobby that happens that I can happen to monetize on. So I really just enjoy that. And I get to help these families. I particularly like to zero in on the possible pre-foreclosures or the families that are in divorce, that they just need to move on and get a fresh start. I love that idea to be able to give them that fresh start.
Mm-hmm.
And I can facilitate that with them and make sure that they get what they need and they have enough to start that new future. So I really enjoy the real estate stuff. The mindset was by accident, completely by accident. I had for the last couple of years really been looking for answers, like what is holding me back and why? And I had some amazing mentors in my time that would just be like, stop thinking, just do it. And I'm like, there's something off there. Like my brain will not just let me do it. There's a reason I'm self-sabotaging.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not put my finger on it. And just by chance, I ran into my now amazing coach. And I just kind of started working with her. And then I got, thrown into this class and put into that class and watched that class. And then suddenly I'm accruing my accreditations and I'm becoming an expert on it. And I glow when I talk about it because I can help somebody, or when they're going through something, I'm like, oh, that's actually X, Y, and Z. And this is how you can get out of it. And they're like, what? That's great. So suddenly I was like, oh, I could really be pretty passionate about that. And then in just the last couple months, I had such a personal shift with my health, and I also experienced autoimmunity. And so I literally watched all of that melt away, and it's no longer an issue for me. So I'm like, oh, I can do that for other people.
Yeah.
So then the book and the speaking is just talking on that. The speaking, I really want to reach out, empower women. I've been to some amazing summits. I want to do that for other people. I want to talk and educate on domestic violence. And then the book I love writing, even though I was told as a child, you have all those teachers, or my mom would always critique me. And so I remember in high school, like, I'm going to write a book someday.
Yeah.
And she would just laugh,
Yeah.
and she's like, well, as long as I edit it, because she would always do my papers and stuff. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm not good at that, but I know different now.
Yeah, and
that mindset really makes a difference.
Those limiting beliefs come into play, and then the little voices.
Absolutely.
You did say a couple of things that I want to kind of go back and touch bases on, and you
okay,
said,
I did say a lot.
you did, and you definitely dropped a lot of great nuggets. So for those of you that are watching and or listening to us, make sure you capture this information, right? So you talked about, you're very passionate and you're very driven, and you wake up every day happy, you love what you do. And when you think about that, that kind of ties into the fact that you live your 9 to 5, right? And it could have been for multiple reasons, except I know for a fact that some people go to their job, their 9 to 5, and they're not happy with that. And so I guess going back to that, my advice, and I want to hear your input, is if you're working at a place that is not fulfilling, that you're not passionate about, that it's not driving you, why are you still doing that? Like, start looking for that passion. I feel like we're here in this world not to just take up space. We're here in this world to make a difference, right? And that difference could be just in our lives, right? And so for you, how was that transition going from your 9 to 5 to finding that passion that you have now?
It is. So many people get stuck in where they're comfortable. First, a good year ago, I learned to be uncomfortable. So from there, I mean, literally, I feel a shift every month because I'm constantly in self-development and I'm constantly uncomfortable. So I definitely think that's the key. So if you're too uncomfortable to move and you're frozen and paralyzed, that's where we can start digging first. That's where I would encourage someone to, just like you said, to dig and find out why you're paralyzed. And then on top of that, it's just scary, especially if you have a family. I have 3 amazing little guys, little nuggets, looking at me, watching me. And now they see how excited I am. I mean, I loved my job. I was good at it. I enjoyed the people. It happened to be in a functional medicine place. So I got to work with the autoimmune patients. That's really where I learned that I could help that world. It's just being real with yourself and taking that risk, because you're correct. So many people don't.
Yeah. And another thing too, that you talk about, being comfortable, right? And he's scared to be uncomfortable to make that change. One thing you mentioned earlier, though, that even people were kind of telling you, like, to an extent, like, are you crazy? Like, are you going to leave your job? Or, then you have all these people telling you stuff. I know for me, when I took my leap of faith, I had people that were telling me, well, why would you leave your job? I mean, I was making really good money, over 6 figures, traveling all over the place. Right. And people were like, are you crazy? Like, you're leaving this that is secure, unquote, to go on this entrepreneurial journey. And I'm not saying it's all rainbows and beautiful. I mean, you and I both know that. At the end of the day,
we know it.
It is definitely more rewarding when you look at the long term, right? If you're living for long term and you're looking at what do I want to do long term, is definitely something great. I realized, though, that, again, going back to that, is you have all these voices. So how do you get rid of that? How do you get rid of the family, the friends, the people that are trying to talk you out of it? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think that's a super tricky one, because it would be so easy to get lost in my fear and being scared. I had a little bit of a difference. The job that I had wasn't providing what I needed for me and the family, let alone any fun dreams or vacations and travel. So for me, it was like, what do I have to lose? I can always just go get another job if I had to. I have also learned not to create a plan B, because then you will sabotage yourself and go make yourself comfortable again. So I don't have plan Bs on purpose. Yeah. I'm just going to do it. So that is that. So yeah, when you've got those people in your ear, I cannot believe how many times I had someone go, what, are you crazy? You just bought a house. You have 3 kids. They're young. You got 3 sets of colleges to get through, like all this stuff. You just bought a car. I'm like, honestly, I learned to let that fuel me, because the more people who doubt me just makes me go farther. Yeah. So that did help for me, but I am not going to say I didn't wake up once or twice in the middle of the night in a panic attack. Yeah. What am I doing? But that's the natural flow. Like you said, entrepreneurship has that roller coaster effect. It could be within the same hour.
Right. And everybody takes it differently. I can tell you that for sure. I know for me, in one of my very last book that became a bestseller, international bestseller, I talk about exactly panic attacks and experiences that I was going through that I've never experienced in my life. And it wasn't until I became an entrepreneur. And I think part of that is that price to pay to be what you want to be long term. And sometimes we as people are so afraid, so uncomfortable. We don't want to deal with the uncomfortableness, and we're afraid to pay that price, knowing that price is what's going to get you to that promised land long term, right?
Yeah.
One thing that you also said is kind of going back to leaving your job and dealing with that and going through that, right? Is just being able to find mentors, right, and coaches. And I hear oftentimes people say, I don't need that. I know how to deal with this, or we're so afraid to pay somebody to show us, teach us, whatever the case may be. What is your point on that?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a good one. Well, I would probably quote a famous Dr. Phil. How's that working out for you? If you don't have a mentor, you're probably not where you want to be. If you are, then great. Then teach somebody else, that sort of thing. I remember I created a bullet board between Christmas and New Year's, and I, put all these goals on there, and I invested in the coach. And that was literally, I had no idea what it was going to do. I had no idea if I was going to achieve those goals. But all I stated in that first week on post is, I just invested in myself. I would literally start that conversation with friends. I decided to invest in myself. And then they, of course, would ask me, and they're like, how are you doing that? I'm like, it doesn't matter. I have no idea how I'm going to do it. But the point is I'm going to do it. So there's just, find the right people. I definitely say, do your research. But there's just not a price tag on where you can go. And people, when they've got a money mindset that's going to hold them back, investing money in a coach seems silly. But we already know that that's not true. That's the only reason for my growth. Yeah. The only reason. I will 100% contribute to that. So of course I would advocate it.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing too is, like, instead of focusing so much on the how, let's focus more on what we're trying to accomplish. The how is going to come is more of that. Yet people get hung up on how am I going to do this? How am I going to find the money? Whatever the case may be, right?
Yes.
I'll give you a quick story talking about the book. When I did my very first book, very similar to what you were saying, at first I was kind of talking myself out of it, right? And because not only I had these little voices in my head telling me, Cesar, you're not a writer. You don't like to read. The last time you read something was back in high school because your English teacher told you to read something, right? Who are you? Who are you kidding? No one's going to buy your book. And I talked myself out of doing that, out of writing my book. And then it wasn't until I decided to change that frame and change the outcome of my desired outcome, and say, no, I want to be a book writer. I want to leave something behind for my daughter or for my family. And then that's when I started writing my book. And I'm glad I did, because once I started writing my book, I was able to impact so many different people. And so sometimes we allow those voices, people, friends, whatever, get in the way of what can potentially change your life and other people's lives.
Yes, most definitely. Aren't you so glad you didn't listen to that little negative voice?
Yeah, exactly, right?
I'm so glad you didn't, or we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Wait, talking about that, that's another thing too. I want to touch base on that. How important is it, relationships, and also the people that you commingle with and you hang around with?
Oh, they say you are the 5 people you hang out with the most, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so, that's huge. Because if you've got 2 or 3 really negative people in your lives, trust me, that's gonna harm you. That's gonna harm definitely your mindset. So important to surround yourself, to get into a community that have like-minded people who have big dreams, that you can throw ideas off and have a mentor out of them. Mm-hmm. Everyone has had a journey. So at some point, someone's been where you've been, and they can help you through that. And then you be sure to turn around and do the same thing back when you're up and someone is just coming in. So important. And it helps us. It motivates us. It keeps us going. Looking at that bigger purpose. That's, on my low days, it's looking at my bigger picture, my higher intention. And that really will keep you going.
Yeah. And the one thing that I like about that too is, like, that's how you and I got connected, right? Through a community of mutual people. And then I realized that we have so many different things in common, from real estate investing to speakers, to mind coaching, to author, like so many different things. And now we're also working together on a couple of projects, which is pretty amazing, right? And so I do believe that finding that group of people, for those of you that are watching, is so critical, because you can start creating ventures, right? You can start creating things together and edifying each other from that perspective. I want to
Yes,
ask
and
you.
encouraging people to talk, like talk to people. You don't know what they've done. You have
Yeah.
no idea if that person in the grocery store is a millionaire who's ready to invest in something
Mm.
or has that opportunity for you next. You just have no idea who you're talking to. You could have talked to a veteran out of World War II that's got an amazing story that's literally going to change your life.
Right.
Talk to people. That's huge.
Yeah, and with that, I think opportunities is knocking, and sometimes opportunity might be disguised in a different way. You don't really recognize it, yet you gotta kind of have the intuition to say, you know what, this is an opportunity. Yes. Might look risky, whatever. I don't know all the ins and outs. Take that opportunity. You know, today is the best day to do that. Let me ask you this: what has been one of your biggest challenges in life?
Oh. Oh. I have to pick just one.
Well, I mean,
I feel like I've had so many.
Well, let's talk about a few of them. Yes.
We'll zero in on one or two. Okay. Obviously, my mindset was a huge one, holding me back. I just had no idea what was whispered or taught to me in my ear growing up, whether it was teachers, my mom, examples that I observed. That paved my way to not have a voice. And that is not good. That is not good at all. So I think one of my biggest barriers is learning to have all eyes on me, get on stage, speak. And then, just really having the courage and the self-esteem to voice what you need to voice. So from that, I was taught very early on, like 6 or 7. I even remember the event and how it happened when I became a people pleaser. It was a big ordeal in the family. I had to go to counseling for something, and I was not giving them what they wanted. And they kept picking at me and picking at me and picking at me until I said what they wanted to hear. So I did. So I remember that pivotal moment that I gave them what they wanted, and everyone was happy now. And so I learned to be a people pleaser. Fast forward, you become an adult, you have relationships, friends, romantic lovers, whatever. I found myself in a toxic marriage, basically. And I can now root that in all of the reflection and all the counseling and all the mindset. I can reflect that was from my upbringing. That's what looked normal to me. So that was a huge hurdle for me to get through. That, like, years and years, and didn't even recognize it myself. Someone had to tell me. And then I was like, no, really? And then I started digging. Oh yeah, it's great. But I think one of my very, very strong characteristics as a person is once I hear something, I have to dig and dig until I get the answer. So while I may have had struggles, that is how I overcome them and rise above, because I will dig until I get that answer. And then I was able to, in the last year, find my voice.
Yeah. I know that a lot of people can definitely relate to this and even learn from your experience. And so I want to dig a little bit more deeper, if we can, in terms of working on your mind, right? I think that's huge, right? And there's an African proverb that says, if there's no enemy inside, there's no enemy outside that can do you no harm. So all of it is in your head, right? And I can relate to that myself too, in many different aspects.
Yeah.
And so I first thing is, how were you able to start working on that mindset to start seeing things from a different lens, changing the framing, right? Looking at things from a different perspective, because really that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, it really is. Again, that's getting uncomfortable, because a lot of people will busy themselves so that they don't have to think about it. That was definitely a technique of mine. I stayed busy. I had kids. I got involved in every organization. I homeschooled. I ran a business out of the home with my husband. Like, I stayed busy. So it's really acknowledging that there's a problem and getting uncomfortable to find it, for sure. And then from there, you just start digging. You're going to uncover all sorts of things from there.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is, we often see this in a lot of relationships, right? Where there's toxicity in the relationship. So can we talk about that and talk about how, you can go as much details as you want. It's really up to you. Except, what was that about,
Absolutely.
and how you came out of that, and what are, because I know there's a lot of people that sometimes they again, denial sinks in. They don't know any better, and they stay in that.
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, and the reason I want to start speaking about it, it's not to speak ill of it. It's not to bash. It's not to victimize myself at all. What I really saw was that I was in such a dark place. I was so unhappy, and I had no idea why. No idea why. I just knew I wasn't going to be able to survive. I truly knew I was going to die, whether it was of a heart attack, stress, whatever. Diseases were going to take over, because that's what autoimmunity is. And so when you don't deal with your emotions, your body takes over and becomes affected. So I knew I was going to die if I did not do something. So I am now brave enough. I'm strong enough. I want to shed that light for those people still in the dark. And it's really simple. While it's difficult to do step by step, day to day, hour to hour, it is a very simple concept. In fact, my first alone book will be all about self-love and self-care, because through that is how I dug myself out of it. I literally knew I was helpless, hopeless, unable to move. And I had no self-esteem. I had no self-respect. I had no self-love whatsoever. So it's as simple as recognizing it first, being kind to yourself, treating yourself like a deserving human being, because we all are. And it's the tiniest little thing that I did just to look at myself and be able to even look at myself in the mirror. I couldn't do that. I had no desire to see myself whatsoever. I would get my nails done. It seems cliche. It seems silly, but my hands were pretty, And so it was enough for me to start digging out. So it is such a basic thing. I encourage anyone and everyone to find what they enjoy. I ended up going to a pottery place and just started painting by myself. It was just taking that time. As moms, we tend to think that feels very selfish. So we get lost in that world of taking care of everybody else. I 100% encourage everybody. I even encourage men to do this. And that's why more people are coming out and telling me, I don't have a partner that encourages that. Well, then you need to talk to them about that. You're both in just a pattern of not allowing each other to have that time. We are human beings who need time to reflect and really still get to know each other. We have so many changes. And if you and your partner are not growing together and understanding and respecting each other on each different stage, you're going to grow apart. It's just inevitable.
Yeah.
But it's the simplicity of finding what you love, demanding time to do it, and allowing that self-care so that you, again, that famous, if your cup is half filled, you can't give. You have to fill your cup to be able to overflow and help others. We all have such a nurturing, loving heart to give other people. We have to take care of ourselves first, just like the mask in the airplane. You have to put your air on first before you can help somebody else. It's the exact same thing. So when I say that's really simple to say, it's a simple concept. Very difficult to implement it in a day. For some of my mom friends where I'm literally like, you need to take 10 minutes to go take a walk. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. Yes, you can. It enrages me. I'm like, yes, you can. Or you're going to die a very early death. Yeah. Or you're going to resent your children, or you're going to resent your husband. It is only healthy for everybody if you take that time.
Yeah. Two things to that. I think sometimes we tend to forget to do the little things because we feel like they're not that important. Like, again, going to walk,
that's true.
Journaling. I did a video earlier this week or last week about some things that you can do to start your day off properly, right? Journaling, exercising, affirmations, things that are very minimal. And sometimes we look at those things and say, well, you know what, this is useless. Yet long-term is not, right? And so it is a process. It's like watering your garden. If you want flowers, nice, beautiful flowers, you have to water them every single day for them to grow nicely. If you don't water that land or you don't fertilize that land, you're gonna get weeds like crazy. That's the negativity, right? So Negative aspects can come out super fast. Positivity takes time and it's a process, right? So sometimes we tend to forget that. The other thing
Very
too,
good point.
Yeah, the other thing too is talking about, you know, being in a toxic relationship. It's not just being toxic where, you know, that there's different types of levels, right? You know, it could be a verbal abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence type of abuse. There's different levels of a toxicity, controlling, so on and so forth. For you though, and I'm gonna get a little bit more of that, is we're talking about domestic violence too, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So,
in the emotional and psychological ways. Yes.
Yeah. So my question to you is, because again, I'm sure certain people that are listening to this might be going through this. It's good to talk. I want you to maybe a little bit deeper and talk about some of the fundamentals to be able to get out of that, to say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm not going to deal with this, whatever, psychological, physical, mental abuse anymore. I'm going to step out of this and just take control of my life. Because I love the fact that, go take care of yourself, go do your nails. All of that is self-love. That's fine. Except there's something that has to happen before that to get to that point. And I want to talk about it.
For sure. And honestly, I think I did it a little backwards, because when I started doing that, I learned the self-respect to then stand up against it. I was unable to do that. So, and mine was more, you know what, it was so not obvious, which is why I was so shocked. And honestly, once I started getting into a support group, which was monumental, please hear me for anybody, find a support group, because that is absolutely going to be life-changing for you. Once I got into that, I realized that 9/10 of domestic abuse is not physical. So when I heard that, you know, because I would even hear, well, you're not getting hit. Oh, okay. That doesn't make it okay. Like, I don't understand. And unfortunately, that person would even say that. Well, you act like, you know, you're a beaten wife. I'm like, it's still not okay. So to understand that, and that's where so many people are stuck in these miserable, horrible existences of relationships, because they don't even realize what they're in the middle of. So as you were saying, there are those different types. And sometimes for me, it wasn't obvious at all. It wasn't name calling. It was so discreet, just enough to keep me down. So that made it that much trickier to, one, rise out of it, two, realize, like, I had to have a core power self-respect to say no more, because it was so disguised. It was so minimal. And I would talk to people about it, and they would just be like, oh, well, you know, that was just the day. No. Or I would even talk to my mom, who was not my biggest advocate when I left them at all. She, in fact, accused me of breaking up her family. And so, again, there I am. That's probably why I'm so resistant now, honestly, now that I say that, because I finally rose to the, no, I'm not, this is what's best for me. I'm out. And I was horribly criticized. I was criticized in the religion and church, my own parents. Not so much my dad. Honestly, my dad never knew. My mom wouldn't tell him. So it was just this big secret. And so, again, not obvious. There was no name calling. There was no obvious hitting. There was no obvious neglect. Never did it in public. He was the perfect idea of a spouse. And so that became tricky. I would almost thrive on those moments, because then I had the guy I had fallen in love with. That was the man I loved and adored. And honestly, I still do. I just no longer will accept the behavior, because again, we have to take responsibility for our hurt and our pain. I understood where it came from. That's still no excuse. That is the trickiest. That is the deepest, hardest, most unidentifiable. But when you start to self-care, self-love, and self-respect, you will finally say, no more. And it was the damnedest, hardest thing I've ever done. It still continues to be. My heart is still broken at times. So, but I have to accept what is in front of me. And then what can I do with this? I'm grateful for the experience in the end. I have amazing children, love them to death. I have an amazing unity, like that, of course, the family part of it. And then I have this amazing ability, now that I've, showed up for myself, this amazing ability to shine that light for other people. Maybe they're in way worse situation. I wasn't in a catastrophe, oh my God, but I plotted and I got out and I thrived as if my life depended on it. It did. And so did my children's. Like, I was not a happy mom. I was not a happy mom, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how hard I faked. I know I taught my oldest, she would know there would be something wrong with me, but I'm like, nope, I'm good. I was always like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. And she's like, so she learned to be a people pleaser and not identify true emotions because I was constantly hiding them. Now, anyone who follows me knows that my mom passed away 3 months ago. Sometimes my son finds me crying. I will just flat out identify that. I'm missing my mom. Mm-hmm. Identifying those emotions and teaching them the difference instead of hiding that.
Yeah. Well, I gotta definitely applaud you for the fact that being able to come out of an abusive marriage and being able to do the things that you're doing and really getting out there to speak to people and with your story, being able to empower them, right? And it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of times we tend to hold back and really not move forward. It's not an easy thing to do for other people, let alone for yourself, right? And going through that transformation phase is what I really enjoy about this show here, is bringing people like you that have truly gone through some major challenges in life and have been able to overcome those challenges and share the ideas that they had to do to really overcome those challenges, right? And there's something here that I like that you mentioned. You said that you are worth it. Anything and everything that you want in life, you are worth that. I want you to elaborate more on that because I believe that that's a very powerful statement. And for those that are listening to us, elaborate more on that point.
Yeah, because that is going to be different for everybody. Just recently, I'm very, very aware. I think I did a video the other day on telling people what you need and what you want out of life. I was not allowed to do that as a child. What I wanted did not matter. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It was just my mom's feelings were more important. So I'm worth that. That being whatever the heck I want it to be. It could be what it was a year ago, which it is. It's different than what it was a year ago, to what I want now. And really, truly believing that. That's how I've been able to lose 50 pounds, is that I know I'm worth the better food and the better quality. I know I'm worth that 10-minute walk. If I need it, then I should go do it. Again, it sounds so simple, but to actually implement that and put that into practice is tricky, especially in our busy lives, in our busy, chaotic, everybody else has needs kind of world. But I just encourage to do the digging so that you realize that you're worth that. And then you can be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Talking about that and being busy, I know we're oftentimes feel like, we don't have enough time, right? And so what would be an advice that you can give the listeners in terms of what they can do to really start finding that time? And I don't think it's about priority management. I think it's more about time management. So start finding that time to be able to get the things done. Again, even if they're so simple, right? What would be an advice on how people can step into that?
Yeah. I hear some of the best mentors and the loudest mentors say, everyone has 24 hours. It's what you do with it, right? So it is the time management. It's, if you're self-sabotaging because you're watching too much TV or you're scrolling through Facebook too much, let's find out why.
TikTok.
Dig. Yes. Well, that's so fun though. But yes, absolutely. Everything in moderation. So if you're doing too much of something, it's really just taking that moment to say, how is this serving me? And is it really looking at my higher intention and what I want out of life? I'm sure anyone can find 2 hours in a day that they are wasting. So, or even just putting that time. So I know somebody who travels an hour to work and an hour back, and he is adamant about putting in a audiobook in self-improvement. He's like, I get 10 hours a week on self-improvement. I'm like,
That's amazing.
Why don't more people think like this? Yeah, exactly. It's as simple as that. It's looking, it's knowing what you want. You have to get uncomfortable to find out what you want and actually declare it and tell people, this is what I'm going to do. And that's okay.
Yeah. And that's where that 5% come into play versus the 95%, right? The 5% are going to do the things that the 95% are not going to do. And again, it's not for everybody. I get it. I do empower. I empower people that at least step into a little bit of that. Even if you don't get to that level, you don't want to be an entrepreneur. You're okay with your 9 to 5, whatever the case may be, that's fine. Always fine. I tell people this all the time. Make sure that you're working harder on yourself than you are on anybody else. And so what that means is that even if you come home tired, maybe go out for a walk. Instead of sitting on the couch, maybe read a book, right? Always work harder on yourself than you do on anybody else, because at the end of the day, your life is dependent on that. Your future is dependent on that. Right. The other thing too that I tell people is that the decisions and the choices that we make today will determine the quality of life that we're going to have tomorrow, right? So definitely.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. You have a coaching program, right? Let's talk about that for 1 second so people know what exactly is it that you do or how you help out people.
Absolutely. Well, and honestly, it's so exciting for me because I just hired a team, an IT and a copy team. So they're actually helping me develop all of that. So it's not in print at the moment, but an amazing team to bring that around. So I have a coaching package that will, we can do individual classes, like just one-time hits, mindset kind of things. We've got 4-week programs, 8-week programs. We have sessions that we can do. Online, one-on-one, there's so many different variables because everyone's at a different point in their journey or what they may need. With that aside, I'm doing the same thing on education on domestic violence. I am so passionate about getting into the schools. I want to get into the younger grades and the older grades to just teach those red flags, not even so much for, well, it is for their future and their future relationships, but even the boys. Like there are so many young men who are in toxic homes and that looks perfectly normal to them. How great to be able to educate them and tell them that that's not normal and you can do better. And you can make sure that your household, the house that you're going to lead is not like that. So many of them can rise above that and do rise above that, and they do it single-handedly, but how great to have that resource available to them. So I'm in the process of creating something like that as well, so that hopefully I can get into the schools.
Yeah, no, I love that. And also you are a contributing author to a book coming up hopefully in December. It's called You Can Overcome Anything When You Exercise the Mind. So that's going to be an amazing book.
Yes.
So make sure you connect with you. So talking about connection, where can people find you if they wanted to know more about you or even about your programs?
Absolutely. So I believe you tagged me. So there's my Facebook.
Yeah.
It's Jennifer Stellrecht, which is a hard German name, and then Smith. I was so excited to marry a Smith because that German last name was horrible to spell for everybody. But with that being said, I'm in the process of creating a group for people to come and get that extra push or that extra education and whatnot. And then of course they can always private message me. And I'll also drop in an email, and actually that looks a little differently. So if I could jump in real quick on the change in the name. So in my books and when I speak from the stage, I will actually be presented as Guinevere Smith, which is exciting for me because that's almost the death of Jennifer and the birth of this new human powerhouse, unstoppable
I love
character. And so that's going to be the Guinevere Smith 11@gmail.com. And I'll also drop that below if you guys prefer email.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I have one last question for you. You've given us a lot of great nuggets,
all right,
and I want to get one more out of you. The people that are watching us and are listening to us, if they're going through some sort of challenge, whatever that might be, what is one thing they can do to start overcoming that challenge?
One thing to do. I feel like I might be repeating myself on that one, but that's just really how I dug out of my hole, is take the time to learn about yourself and do that thing. I have one amazing friend right now. She's so down, she's depressed, she's unhappy. And suddenly I started seeing her singing. She's got a recording studio at her house. She just plays around with it. She's going out to the bars. She's singing karaoke. I am so in awe of her. I had no idea she had a voice, and she's killer. So I encourage you to find that. We all have talents. Find that talent, lean into that talent, and then you're really going to gain that self-confidence and be able to move forward.
Yeah, and with that, I think what I want to add to that is that even if you don't have all the means, whatever that might be, right? The resources, the money, whatever, to really develop that talent 100%. It's not about having all of that. It's about starting somewhere, right?
Somewhere.
Sometimes we get hung up and say, well, I don't have the place to do this, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the resource, whatever the case may be. And then we just don't do it. Just start somewhere, right? It starts one step at a time.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and even just following those people that inspire you. I had just done a video on that as well. Is once you start following mentors or people who inspire you, like their energy or whatever, ideas are going to start coming, and you're going to come out of your shell. So yes, absolutely. Find a mentor.
There's definitely 2 people here, so you can definitely follow us and just
absolutely.
listen to our stuff. So yeah, Jennifer, anything else that you want to say before I let you go?
Just thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat and kind of get out there and let more people hear the story and know that they can come out of that darkness. So thank you, Cesar.
No, definitely. I really appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure you like, you comment, you share, and you subscribe to this podcast. You can find us at any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms. So I will see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, I'm CesarRespino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.